So let's get this conversation started. First of all, RivalCon, are you all happy to be here? So you can hear them. John Lowrie is best known for his roles as the sniper in Team Fortress 2, as well as various roles in the games Half-Life 2, Left 4 Dead, and Dota. He's voiced the title role in the radio dramas of The Classic Adventures of Sherlock Holmes and The Further Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, and is also the author of the sci-fi novel Dancing with Eternity. So welcome, John.
Thank you very much. Yay!
London-based actress Natalie Winter has been seen on stage in a number of different roles with both the Queen Mary Players and the Drama Studio London. She's done a number of voiceover roles for various audio dramas, including some of the Scyther podcast audio dramas available on our home website at RivalCastmedia.com. And has recently finished some voice work for the video game Fractured Space, being released by Edgecase Games. So welcome, Natalie.
Thank you very much. Not quite as flashy a CV, but thank you for having me.
Yo, you're good. And Ellen McLain inadvertently inspired this panel through her role as GLaDOS in the video game series Portal. She's a singer and voice actress from Tennessee. She's also voiced characters in Pacific Rim, Team Fortress 2, and numerous other games. So welcome, Ellen.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Yes, we're very happy to have all three of you here. So we wanted to ask questions to give you an idea. I mentioned this to you guys in my pitch. We do this podcast on RivalCast Media called RCM on Tap, whose goal is to go behind the scenes of what people do in video games, whether it's development or acting or music composition, and just get to know the people that create the games that we love so much. So we wanted to ask some not as traditional questions, convention questions, but the interesting thing about actors is that very few people just are actors. I mean, they have a number of other things that they do. John, we mentioned, the books that you've written before. Ellen's done singing and opera singing in particular. I mean, how do you go from being an opera singer to GLaDOS? So, I mean, when you were a kid, what did you dream of being when you grew up?
Let's see. First, I wanted to be an astronaut. And I wanted to be a submarine pilot, then I wanted to be a heart surgeon, then an architect, then a heart surgeon again. Then I really thought I was going to be, when I landed on something, what I landed on was a composer. And for many years, I was a jazz fusion guitarist in a guitar duo called the Keith Lowry Duet. And I wrote for that group. That's what I was doing for quite a few years. And then I happened to get a job playing in the pit orchestra of a European tour of a Broadway show. And that's where I met Ellen. We met in Arnhem in the Netherlands. She was in the cast and I was in the pit orchestra. And so she was the one who really introduced me to professional acting. I'd always been interested in acting when I was a kid, but I had no idea. Growing up in Boulder, Colorado, I had no idea how you went from being nobody to being Tom Cruise, and I didn't know there was anything in between. And Ellen was that European tour was the first time I met just regular working actors, and so that's kind of what got me started in that. And then when we moved out to Seattle, I went ahead and got a voice demo back in 1989 and got an agent and started auditioning for, at that point, just radio commercials, TV commercials, what they call industrial videos, which are instructional videos used by companies to instruct their employees and stuff like that. And then in 1995, Sierra Online and Humongous and a couple other companies started doing video games up in Seattle, and I started getting auditions for those games and started landing the job. So that's really just through auditioning that I started doing this work in video games.
And I got the work because I married John.
Well, yeah, she says that because basically I was the computer geek in the family, And so I already was set up on my computer to do auditions for voiceover and stuff like that. And so when she got an agent, it was very easy for her to jump in. And of course, I would engineer all of her auditions for her.
And he still does.
And I still do.
He is still my tech support, because although I am the voice of a computer, I am a complete technophobe.
Well, I feel you there. I'm fortunate in that I have a whole team of guys that do most of my tech stuff for me, so
That's good.
I completely understand.
It's always good to have people to take advantage of.
Ask GLaDOS.
Well, Ellen, what did you dream about being when you grew up?
Singer.
Always a singer?
Always a singer. My earliest memories, really from, being 4 and 5 years old, I sang all the time. And I was a very unhappy child, and what I would do is go off by myself and just make up little songs and sing. Singer. That was it.
And you certainly made it with that. So what about you, Natalie? What did you want to be?
A Power Ranger for a very long time. Then I grew up a little bit, and I wanted to be a lawyer and a writer, much to my grandparents' delight. And then I grew up a bit more and decided I wanted to be an actress, and that upset them. But I come from a very performative family. My mum was a model. She did a little bit of acting. She was a drama teacher. She was my drama teacher for a long time. So I kind of got the bug from her, really. It's her fault. I mean, when I grow up, I'd still like to be a space pirate, princess, dinosaur, combination, Jedi, all of it, really. Which again, I think is one of the reasons why I wanted to get into acting, is you can do all of these things and more. And in terms of voice acting, I only really discovered a like for it when I went to drama school and started doing radio classes, commercial classes, and that kind of things. And people started telling me that I was all right at it, and that I should do it. And I've been a video gamer for a very long time. So things like BioWare's games, Jennifer Hale's performance in Mass Effect as Commander Shepard. I'd love to be able to just be anywhere near as good as that. And some unknown woman, Ellen something, played a robot. I really enjoyed that. So I'm geeking out as much as the audience a little bit right now.
All right, and Steve Chesterton has just joined us too. Steve is also a voice actor who got into voice acting in sort of a accidental way. He's a former member of the Royal Navy. He got his start by filling in for reading last minute for a narrator who fell ill. His work includes doing narrations for the MASH podcast, the various work in television, and also, like Natalie, did numerous roles for Scyther Podcast Audio Dramas. Steve, the question right now is, we're talking about the bridge between what you wanted to be when you grew up and where how you got to your voice acting. So what did you dream about being when you grew up?
A helicopter pilot is what I wanted to be when I grew up. How I got into voice acting, that's a long story, but trying to cut it short is, as you quite rightly say, I kind of fell into it, and then was recommended from person to person, to just come and audition and do things, and it really just kind of grew really strangely. I think I do speak to other people. They seem to tell me, you send out audition tapes and this, that, and the other, and I was just sort of like passed from person to person, like some strange vocal parcel.
But you're making it out all well.
Yeah, I am doing okay. And actually, the reason why I have been adrift, and I apologize for this, is I have just finished a 24-hour charity stream. I was helping DB Nation. I've been the kind of streamer and announcer for DB Nation, helping out for Special Effect, which is a charity that enables disabled people, people who have been injured in the military or car crash or something like that. They bespoke design controllers and things, basically so that they can have some escapism. A wonderful charity, and we've raised over £2,800 for them this last 24 hours, so we did really well. We smashed our target of £1,500.
Perfect.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been a long day. I'm just going to say that.
All right, so helicopter pilots, singers, Power Rangers, astronauts. I mean, one of the neat things, as Natalie said, about being an actor or any entertainer really is with acting especially, you've played numbers of roles over the years, so you get to be a little bit of these different things that you dreamed about being as a kid. So whether it was a video game or an audio drama or a television show or what have you, of all the roles that you've played to date, which one do you think has been the most fun for you as an actor, and which one are you most proud of?
Well, actually, I did a stage show based on a British movie, The Full Monty, and a theatricalization was done in the States, set in Buffalo, New York, and I played the old piano player, Jeanette. And I talked like, they're here, they're live, and they're going for the full Monty. And actually, that was the role that was furthest from who I am. And I think I did my best work on it.
Breaking outside that box a little bit, I love it.
It's hard to say for me. I've gotten to do some fun things. A couple of interactions with Sir Alan Ayckbourn. I did a play of his back in the 90s where I played a young composer, and I also got to compose all the music in the play, and that was a lot of fun.
Oh, nice.
And then just a couple of years ago, Alan was out here in Seattle, and he hired me to do a play of his called Sugar Daddies, and I got to play an old London policeman. And working with him was wonderful. But over the years, I've done so many plays, and doing the sniper is great fun. I think that the wonderful thing about the writing at Valve is that they love to imbue their games with comedy, and their characters have allow voice actors to put so much personality into them, and so that's been a lot of fun. But I've worked on a lot of new pieces, a lot of new plays, and right now Ellen and I are helping to develop a new video game called The Church in the Darkness, where we're actually working with the designer to develop the characters and develop the dialogue and stuff like that. And so that's been very satisfying.
Paranoid Productions, Richard Rouse.
Yeah, the Church in the Darkness. So I don't know. I got to play J. Edgar Hoover in a short film, and that was a lot of fun. But I don't know, there's just so many things.
We're so old, we've done a lot.
That's right. That's right.
What about you, Devious? So you've you've done Alfred in Batman. You've done
I've been Beast and Colossus, and many other British posh-speaking roles, of course.
So which one did you like doing best?
I think the one I enjoyed the most is actually the audio drama in which I played Colossus. Because you push your chest out and become big Russian. It's lovely. It's so much fun to play that. It really is a whole lot of fun. And I have to be incredibly naive as well, which is nice. That does suit me as a person, definitely. So yeah, that's the one I've had most fun with, definitely. As for the one I guess I'm most proud of, I guess it would be my work in so far in the game for Impeller Studios, which is Starfighter Inc. It's still in production right now. It's still in early stages, but that's been quite challenging because it's still in the concept stage. I've had to do like 15 different voices for one character because they don't know what they want yet. So it's a really kind of bizarre process. My experience from working in games is way different from John's. It's been incredibly vague, and that's made it incredibly challenging. It's made I've had to try and predict what the producer wants because they don't know. I have to give them such a raft of different sort of, well, just eccentricities, I guess, really. It'll be roughly the same character, but just have different tones, different intonations, the way they word things, obviously different accents as well, just to try and nail down this one character. So trying to find the right thing for them has proved a challenge, a serious challenge.
Now, Natalie, you just finished work on doing some voice work for Fractured Space as well. Did you have like similar things, or were they more like they had the idea of what they wanted when they brought you on?
With Fractured Space, they got me in for two different things. The main one was Coda, who's the computer. So a little bit of channeling. GLaDOS for that, although Coda's much nicer. A bit more well behaved. So there was a very specific, just a general British RP accent, and they've placed loads of post-production on my voice, but it's similar to Stephen's experience in that I did it all without direction, all recorded in my home studio and sent to them. So they had a sample at the start with, and they were like, yeah, a little bit more like this. Yeah, other than that, that's great. And since then, they just send me the lines. I do them because with a character like that, it's a bit more simple. There's less cross wires going on in terms of delivery, really. They did get me doing some other characters for some little YouTube ad spots and that kind of thing. But yeah, that's been really fun, actually. And it's kind of ongoing. It's just been released, so there's lots to still be done as it's a MOBA and they're developing and adding more to it. So yeah, that's been loads of fun. In terms of the most fun role I've done, though, I've done all sorts of very bizarre things. I've been George from the TV show Rainbow, if anyone remembers that, with the puppets.
Oh yeah,
it's a very, very British TV show. in the live stage show of that, I've been George. I've been an insane clown in a short video about clowns. But actually, Jean Grey, going back to what Steve was saying about the X-Men series, it's really fun playing Jean Grey because X-Men was such a big part of my childhood. I loved the 90s TV series, and getting a chance to play that character, like they're not going to cast me in the X-Men Hollywood films. I'm a bit too old, a bit too short, not quite Hollywood looking enough, and also British, so you know.
Yeah.
So getting the opportunity, although Sophie Turner is British as well, to be fair. But yeah, so getting to kind of play her, put my own spin on her, but also kind of have the in-joke of copying some of the stuff that people remember from the 90s TV series, all of the Scott, no! That kind of stuff. That was a lot of fun. The amount of times I had to record the line Scott in various different intonations, you have no idea. There was a recent YouTube video. They did a review of the 90s the TV series. And that was one of the things they mentioned was how many times Scott and Jean just say each other's names. And I sat there watching it going, yep.
That reminds me of my own experience where I played Solomon Grundy in the Batman series, and the only thing Solomon Grundy says is Solomon Grundy. So you have to come up with like 100 ways of saying Solomon Grundy.
It's like Groot.
Yeah. I've been in a position to kind of do the other side of that coin, where when I was doing the Suffering, I had to come up with 13 different characters in one session, and which is fun to come up with different ranges of speaking, different tempos of speaking, different dialects, all that kind of stuff. But then at the end of this 4-hour session, I have to die as all of them.
All right.
If anyone here wants to tell me how to scream with a Bronx accent, and then how to scream with a Southern accent, and how to scream with a British accent, that was a lot of fun.
Oh, screaming with the British is easy. It's oh darn.
Yeah.
Bother.
So I was doing
Yes.
I'm going, oh bother.
A gentleman would never scream, of course.
Cool. Well, all right. So both Steve and Natalie have talked about having recent games either just come out or they're in production. They'll be coming out. And part of being an actor, especially as you get further and further along in your career, is you'll often do publicity appearances for your work. In some cases, like today, that includes speaking at conventions. So tell me about, and I know that not all of you have been to conventions, so I'll tweak it a little bit for you, but tell me about some of the more memorable convention or publicity experiences that you've had.
Well, I have to say mine's, one of them. John and I have been to a lot, and they're all great, and we always have a good time. But I have to say that Kiddicon in Birmingham was fabulous. And I have a scarf. In Portal 2, there's a point where Cave Johnson talks about lemons and the lemon speech. And this lovely young woman came up to me and had a present for me. And it was this beautiful scarf with lemons all over it. And I wear it all the time.
She does.
Amazing.
So that's a memorable moment. But then also, and I'm sure John will concur, is we went to Dubai last September. And that was very fascinating to be approached by game fans in traditional Arab dress, the young men and the young women. And they were just as game crazy as people we've met in Sweden, and of course lots of folks here in the States and in England. People, if you're a gamer, you're a gamer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to be asked to speak in the sniper voice in Arabic, funny lines that he wants to put on his phone to his girlfriend. Yeah.
I feel like I need to hear that.
Yeah, right. I remember what Kabibi is, or something like that, means my loved one or something. And he had this, he says, I want you to say, why don't you want to talk to me? I like you. Okay, whatever, Kabibi. And, it's only in Arabic. And I had to say that in the sniper voice. And all of these, Arabic people just went nuts. They just laughed and clapped and, were just out of their minds. And we also, the kinds of stereotypes that get broken when you actually get to go there. We met a young woman, Fakra Al-Manzari, who completely traditional Arab dress. She was from, I believe, Abu Dhabi, but she is the CEO and president of a game company. called what is it, mutant humans, or no, hybrid humans, and we just really weren't expecting, all the rumors and stereotypes you hear about that part of the world. We weren't expecting to meet a young woman who was running her own company making video games, and it was just a very, very fascinating experience.
So games are a unifier, which we love. Yeah. We love that. Games are a unifier, and our one of our young nephews, he plays. I can't think of the name of the game. What he plays?
Oh, the one that's not as complex as Dota.
It's not Dota. It's one that he even says is not as hard. But right. He plays it with people all over the world because he worked in Japan for a while, and so he's playing with friends, still in Japan and in Europe. He's got brothers in Europe, and it really is a wonderful unifier.
Yeah, and speaking of actual, promotional things, when I went to the Kickstarter party, when they got their money to put together a Planetary Annihilation, they had a party and they had the computer screen up, and they had a couch and a little webcam and stuff like that. And we'd sit there and answer questions that would pop up on the screen. And these questions were coming from New Zealand and Iran and Ukraine and South Africa. And everybody just, kicking in to find out these games. And it really fills me with optimism that the young people in the world are getting so connected with each other and playing with each other and getting to know each other on a global scale. It's really wonderful.
Video games will change the world.
That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, well, it's already changed. It's already happening. We're just in the beginning, but it's happening.
There's a brilliant TED Talk by Jane McGonigal, I think her name is, about the power of video games and connecting people and using it as a crowdsourcing kind of knowledge hive to figure things out, but through video games. And also, she created a game called Super Better or something to help her deal with her depression. And Games for Change, which I think is brilliant. I kind of just sound like I'm her promo lady, but yeah, I think there's some great stuff going on in the industry along those lines.
Yep.
That's really what RivalCon was all about too, is just bringing people together under a united gaming thing, and just.
Well, I can't tell you how many cons we've been at where people either got engaged at the con, got married at the con, or were on their honeymoon at the con.
And they met online.
Right. We were doing a webcast with a guy in Bath, England, and went very well. Had a nice time, and they said, "Well, you guys, if you wouldn't mind hanging around, I have a couple of friends here who'd like to meet you." Well, by here he met on the internet, because the young woman was in Maine and the young man was in Florida, and they were engaged, having never actually been in each other's physical presence. They just met online and played video games and fell in love with each other. So it's kind of magical.
I'm an avid gamer myself, and I do enjoy games in all their forms. I do love a good story game. One of my favourites of most recent has been things like The Witcher 3. And, I love the voice of Geralt as well. I think having that kind of voice is incredible, but to have that voice, you'd be typecast in those roles all the time. So, blessing and a curse, but yeah, I'm a member of many gaming communities as well. Yeah, it certainly is a unifying thing. I have friends in Australia, America, Germany, Sweden, all over Europe, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of communities, so the next question I had for you guys, a good chunk of RCM's community are college students and young adults that are just striking out in the world. Just from all of your experiences so far, and thinking back, on your careers and knowing what you know now, what's one thing that you wish you would have known at 20? And what's one piece of advice you want to share with the younger members of this audience?
Take care of your knees.
Yes.
Yes.
Jackpot. That's it. Show's over.
Make the most of your body before you're 25, because it's
Yeah.
all downhill from that.
Yeah. Don't believe all this, physical exercise is good for you. I used to
Oh,
have
yeah.
knees in the back until I started climbing mountains. So,
Yeah, John and I, one of the reasons we moved out to Seattle is for, backpacking. And we did that a long time, and we don't have any knees left at all. So.
Yeah.
Think of all the things you've got to see, though, from those mountaintops.
Yes. Well,
it's absolutely worth it. Yeah.
It's spectacular, and that, we love the Pacific Northwest. Neither of us, grew up here, but boy, we love it and wouldn't leave now. But I think, what I didn't know at 20, I was in a big hurry, and I was talking to an opera colleague yesterday, and she's not as old as I am. She's in her 40s. I'm in my 60s. But we were talking about, not being in too much of a gosh darn hurry with our voices and our art and our craft, and to continue to study and not be discouraged when people don't, immediately want to hire you. Because it takes a while, I think, for artists to discover who they are and what they have to offer. And I was early on discouraged because I was singing for everybody, opera auditions, and, getting hired some, but not getting hired very much. And I think it sort of discouraged me early, and I discovered other things, music theater and, ultimately voiceover and all of that stuff. But it sort of sidetracked me from opera because I wasn't really ready yet. I needed more time and more maturity and more development. So I say, don't get discouraged. Keep doing what you love. And I think if you do that, eventually that will be noticed. I don't know if that's helpful. But...
No, it is.
For me, actually, I'm still learning that kind of stuff. So thanks.
I do completely agree with that. I think a lot of the struggle of being VO is knowing where you sit in that field. People think VO is just VO, and it's not. There's a million different niches, and you fit one of those niches. Being comfortable in that niche, for example, I got asked to read an audiobook. I had to pass it for health reasons, but the second book was entirely read from the female perspective. Now, while I may have a lovely reading voice, trying to do a female voice just comes off kind of Monty Python, like, oh no, it just doesn't work. So just professionally, I had to pass on that one, unfortunately. So yeah, it's knowing where you sit in that field and being comfortable with it. Finding your place and being happy with that place is half the battle, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think as I get older, I grow more and more impressed with the scope of my own ignorance. The hardest thing to remember is all the stuff that you don't know. I think that human beings really only get into trouble when they start thinking they know what's going on. As long as they remember that they're this tiny speck of protoplasm in a vast universe, and they're only seeing the tiniest little part of it at any one time, that helps, because you can form all kinds of opinions, and some of those opinions can be self-defeating. Some of those opinions can be self-aggrandizing in a way that becomes self-defeating. I mean, there are all kinds of things that you can do to yourself when you forget how tiny you are. And that's one thing that mountain climbing really teaches you in a very physical way, that the mountain does not care how well you do. But I think it's important to remember.
I mean, one of the original men or persons of 1,000 voices was Mel Blanc.
Yes.
They were wonderful in what they did. I don't believe they ever stepped outside of cartoons, to do anything else, but he was the man of 1,000 voices in cartoons. He's not the voice of God that you would hear on a movie. He's not the salesman trying to sell you a weird piece of exercise equipment at 3 a.m. on some, ad channel. But he was a legend when it came to voices in cartoons, and that's what Mel Blanc was. He had his niche. Even a man of that skill and talent had a niche.
But even so, with Mel, I mean, he started out on radio.
Yeah.
And if you go back and listen to the Jack Benny show and some of those old shows, I mean, he was on doing these wacky characters on the radio, which led him very naturally into doing voices for cartoons. But yeah, who knows what he would have accomplished if there had been video games back then? We can only But it's very true. He wasn't really the buy this stuff because I have a deep voice guy. He was a goofy guy and made a great career.
On a more general note, I would say as well, particularly to my 20-year-old self, give yourself permission to do things. I spent a lot of time kind of, especially at uni, thinking, oh, it'd be nice to do that, it'd be nice to do that, but never quite getting around to it, and not giving myself a kick in the backside occasionally. So just doing the thing. Go for it. Do the thing. Listen to Shia LaBeouf.
We were thinking that too. All of us were thinking that too. Well, fantastic. We do have some questions from the audience. So the first question, this one is for Ellen. Did you have any vocal training, like opera, theater, or classical style? And how did that affect your becoming a voice actress, if it did at all?
Well, yeah, I started to take voice lessons. I always sang, always. But I started to take serious voice lessons when I was 13. And I had wanted to start earlier, but the local voice teacher in Nashville said, no, she's too young. She was basically waiting for me to get through puberty, which really is, for any serious vocal training, you really do want to wait until after puberty. But I think, training as a singer, training as a musician. I played piano badly, but I do play piano. And working on my voice, I got very used to trying to make different sounds. And so that trained my voice and my ear to try to follow my imagination. Or for GLaDOS, I actually had to copy a computer-generated voice track in the beginning so that I would sound like a machine. And, I did an audition with, I'm sure, several other actresses in Seattle. And I'm the one who got closest to this voice that was copyrighted. So Valve didn't want to use it because they would have had to have paid royalties. So, and that really is, musical training and copying what I heard.
I think for me, one piece of advice, because I haven't had any real formal training, classical training. I was taught once that it's not can you do a voice, it's can you do Shakespeare in that voice. Now that's a rather strange thing to say, but what it actually means is can you emote in that voice? Can you provoke emotion in that voice? Can you can you do all the things that is required of a normal voice in whatever voice it is that you're doing? I think of that every time I receive some copy, a script or some direction or something like that. It's how real can I make this? Because there's many different additions you need to do. The ums and the ahs and things like that. The humanization of a character. All that comes into the building of said character. And that's incredibly important to making something real. Something people can attach to.
Yeah, I like to say that the operative word in voice acting is acting. I think that particularly in video games, now you can get away with doing radio commercials and stuff like that if you just have a nice announcer voice. But if you're going to do animation or video games, if somebody's killing you, if you're getting eaten by a space spider, you need to make the game player believe that space spider actually is eating you. And that means, showing up and bringing it, just like these guys want their video games to be like blockbuster movies. So they want, acting. And I think it's, very important.
Very neat. Okay, the next question, we've got a couple of them that are somewhat similar, so I'm going to combine them a little bit. So they're talking about when you're creating characters and finding the voices for characters. The question is, how difficult is it to get the right voice of a character? How do you know when you have that? And are you given leeway with this, or is it the directors know what they're looking for and they just tell you when you've hit it right?
Okay, the pendulum swings so far both ways on that one. You can have someone who has no idea what they want.
Right.
Absolutely no clue whatsoever, and are looking to you to give them some kind of ideas and suggestions. And as any good VO, you'll be able to come up with at least 3 or 4 ideas for the information you've been given. And then there's the other side of the pendulum, where someone has an incredibly specific vision of the character. If they've wrote something, the chances are they've had an idea of that person in their mind. Like the perfect person to play that part, so to speak. And you have to kind of get as close to that as possible. And so, the pendulum really does swing very, very far both ways on that one. Yeah. I've had experience on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that you got the voice right if you got hired.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But I think a lot of times, when we get auditions, the audition, there'll be a description of the character, the kind of person that they are, or the kind of monster or whatever. There'll be some artwork to let you know what the character looks like, and then there'll be a bunch of lines. And as an auditioner, you're trying to come up with something that you feel would come out of that face, out of that body. And in this way, it's a bit like mask work in Commedia. But you're trying to figure out what would fill out the artwork that you're looking at. Have you ever noticed that you hear a voice on the radio, or you hear a voice in a video game, and then you meet the person and it doesn't look anything like what you thought they were going to look like because of the voice that you heard?
Yes.
You're kind of doing that backwards. You're kind of looking at the face and saying, okay, what voice would come out of that face? And I think we'd all agree that that's kind of what we try to do when we audition. Is that right?
Oh,
yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
In terms of actually learning to create characters, I guess the advice I was given is just to play. Keep playing. Just even when you're not auditioning for a character or trying to create a character. Like my husband and I do the dishes in different accents and chat to each other just for fun. Not even for work or anything, but never stop playing. Life's more fun that way.
All right, this one is for Ellen, and it goes along with the same idea. How much say did you have with GLaDOS, if any at all?
Well, with GLaDOS, I didn't really have any say in the beginning, because I really was supposed to sound like this computer-generated voice. So that's what I did. Then, if you know the game, after GLaDOS loses the morality core, changes. And at that point, we were in the studio, and I was talking to, Eric Wolpaw, and the writer, and Bill Van Buren, the producer, and trying different voices. So we came up with something else, just sort of trial and error. And then, of course, that voice was processed as well. What I remember as more fun, though, was when I came up with the voice of the turrets.
You still there? Canvassing.
Oh, no, not again.
So
I'm having flashbacks now.
So
I don't blame you.
Yes, there it is. Well done. It was sort of more unexpected, because I was like, oh my God, what do they want now? And so I sort of thought of as a little Alvin and the Chipmunks voice, which lots of females can do, and they liked it. They liked having these little gun things sound like a little, chipmunk.
The interesting thing with the Portal games, when the first one came out, it was, very short and instant smash and all that kind of stuff. And Ellen did the voice. And when they did the second one, when they did Portal 2, this is something unique in my experience in video games anyway. The character of GLaDOS was so much the core of the game that the level designers, the animators, all those folks couldn't work with just some coder putting in a test voice for the voiceover work. They needed to bring Ellen in all the time so that they could have the actual character of GLaDOS, the maniacal computer, while they were designing the game. And that's the first time that I'd seen that happen.
So I recorded over a period of 10 months because the game Portal 2 kept changing, and the writers kept changing the story. And so I just would go in and record some more. It was a good gig.
Well, I have to say, in my youth, well, not that long ago, really, but I actually wrote a thank you letter to what I hoped was your agent at the time. I Googled you and tried to find you and write you a thank you letter, just to say how much your role in that entire thing had affected me. It made it one of my favorite games of all time, and that was pretty much down to your performance as GLaDOS.
Well, how kind. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And
it's a great game.
Well, I chalk it up to the writers, because I think as an actor, we've all been in situations where the writing's not very good, and I call it, sort of by the seat of your pants acting, because you have to make something out of it. But the writers for Portal and Portal 2, Eric Wolpaw and Jay Pinkerton and Chet Balasek, they're such wonderful writers that I sort of feel like the character was handed to me on a platter.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's that wonderful British actor who just died recently, just in like age 70? But Alan Rickman. Alan Rickman once said, "Actors don't get awards; roles get awards." And I think that's very true. You bring your toolbox. You're as an actor, you're a journeyman craftsman, and you bring your tools. You want your toolbox to be full. You want to know which tool to use for what thing. But the job you get is going to define how you can use those tools, and how into it you get to go, how far into the character you get to go. Because some characters, I remember some video games I haven't even been credited on, where all I was saying was, go left, more ammo, health, and stuff like that. It takes writing to ultimately it takes writing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember one particular instance on this game. I'm not sure how much I can say, but sod it. I was given some lines and given the scene, but the scene wasn't in place in the game. So what you had was you were just kind of placed into this spaceship, and you heard me giving it the kind of Star Trek captain, things going off, exploding everywhere, and I'm like, what in the unearthly hell is going on here? And it sounded completely out of place because there was no scene around it. So yeah, that was an awkward moment for me.
Strange, yes.
And one of the great things about being really, 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 really old is you kind of become a living history book about video games. I mean, back in '95, the kids who were starting up these game companies were basically techno geek maniacs. They really loved coding. They really loved making puzzles. They really loved putting all this stuff together. They had never even met an actor. They had no idea what to do with actors. And I remember I was doing Betrayal at Antara. And the first thing that happened was, they gave me artwork in my audition. I thought, okay, there's some, half wood houses, half timbered houses. Looks like it's probably in medieval England. So I'll do like a Sean Connery. And so I did a Sean Connery on my audition. Well, I got the job and I went in there. And the first thing they said to me was, we really liked that Sean Connery thing you did. You know, that Welsh thing?
Wow.
I didn't have the right to tell them that he was Scottish, but I said that to an English friend of mine, and he came right back with the name's Bond, isn't it? But so that was the first thing. But what they just gave me a whole bunch of lines, and what actors do is respond to their environment, respond to what's going on, and so I'd have all these lines. Like, the line WHAT question mark. That line can be what? Or what? Or what? Or
that's it.
And you have to know what's going on. They didn't even have the writer in the booth. I mean, they who knew what was in there? Who was in there? Some sound guys, I guess. And so I'd say, well, who am I talking to? Why am I saying this stuff? And they'd have to call up the writer to find out. Well, at one point, I came up to a line and it said, "Goodbye, son." And I said, okay, well, why am I saying goodbye to him? What's going on? And they talked to each other, and they finally called up the writer, talked to him for a while, and got back to me and said, okay, here's a place where the game branches. And your son is either going to go down the street for a piece of bread and be right back, or he's going to go through this interdimensional portal into another universe, and you're never going to see him again. So could you say it so that it would work either way?
Yeah.
Wow.
Piece of cake, right?
Yeah.
And so I said it like Sean Connery. And they liked it. So they liked the Welsh thing.
Yeah, you touched on a point that I like to give to people when they ask me about it, and it's reading the lines behind the lines. You said yourself, I always give them the example of "oh no," and there's 100 ways to say that because it depends on the context of the situation. You need that context in order to deliver that line, like "oh no," or "oh no," and so on and so forth. You need that context, and that's key for people to get the right sentiment across.
Yeah, and I think that you if you go back and look at video games through the years, you will notice a real rise in the level of acting in the video games. And a lot of this has to do with the level of directing in video games. I mean, by 1998, when I was working on No One Lives Forever and The Suffering and stuff like that, the writers were in the studio with me. They were giving me full on what the story is, where I am, how many explosions are going off, whether or not my best friend died, all that kind of stuff to inform, so that I knew what I was trying to portray.
Yeah.
All right, I think we have time for a couple more questions. The first one, how do you remember the multiple characters' voices that you do over long periods of time?
They play samples. I go into the studio. I just did some administrator in Team Fortress 2, and they just play some of the stuff that I did earlier. And it's like, oh yeah, victory.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So,
The muscle memory kicks back in.
Yeah, I mean, but they play it for you. You hear it.
Yeah, I mean, our job is to imitate people, so it's fairly easy to imitate ourselves once we hear what we did.
Well, it could be months between scripts and things like that. So for me, that's the only way to do it. You've got to listen to how you did it last time, because the sentiment I get from the script on the next one, I could deliver it differently, and I have made that mistake before. I'm not going to deny I do make mistakes.
Yeah, but that's right. If they don't have samples of what you did before, you're going to eat up a lot more studio time looking for it.
Yeah.
So just listening back to how you delivered it last time is the perfect thing.
Yeah.
All right, and the last question that they had. Can Ellen confirm through her sources at Valve that Half-Life 3 will be out in 2018?
So
Who wrote that?
Here's the honest answer. I am an actor, and I am the last person who is told anything.
Yep. Last line in the chain.
Here's the inside go. Gabe Newell was viciously attacked by a 3 when he was 4 years old, and he's never recovered. He's never used the number 3 ever again.
I think that's the best answer anyone could have given for that question. All right. Well, again, thank you all. John Lowrie, Ellen McLain, Natalie Winter, and Steve Chesterton, our voice actor panel for the very first RivalCon ever. So thank you, all of you, for taking the time to come and talk with us today. We very much appreciate it. And for the RivalCon guests, we are going to be setting up our next panel with our musicians in just a little bit. So stay tuned.